Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope everybody had an amazing weekend. I know I did because football is back. We had an officially real football game going on, and it was a great week of football as it was in football. Week 0 started off yesterday. Very, very excited for that. We'll break everything down that happened, including the first upset loss in the first game of the season. A top 10 team already falls. We'll break down that as well as SMU and a couple of other power conference teams that played in week 0. Then, or before that, actually, we're going to talk about the biggest news of the day, the headline of our show, CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb signs a huge deal, 4 years, $136 million. We'll talk about that, the new records that he has set, what it means for the wide receiver market going forward, and really just a historic offseason for the wide receiver market as a whole. We also are going to finish off, we've gone through every single team now. This is going to be the final team for the preview series of the NFL today, taking a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just 10 days to football, guys. I'm so excited for the NFL to kick off. I cannot wait. And we're also going to talk about UConn potentially entering into a deal to join the Big 12. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, today we are going to start off our show with the biggest news of the day. CeeDee Lamb, it broke just about 3 hours ago. As I was finishing up prep for the show, we had breaking news. CeeDee Lamb, Cowboys stud wide receiver, signs a brand new 4-year, $136 million contract. That is huge. That makes him the second highest paid receiver in the history of the NFL. Not just that, the second highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the NFL, falling $1 million behind a fellow receiver, Justin Jefferson, who also signed a massive contract this offseason. Although CeeDee Lamb does have records in other parts. He signs a $38 million signing bonus on that contract record. $100 million guaranteed. That's insane. $100 million guaranteed, and absolutely CeeDee Lamb deserves it. We've talked about this all off season long. We've talked about how CeeDee Lamb is one of those guys that undoubtedly needs a contract. And we've talked about how the Cowboys are kind of in not the greatest situation. And, you know, Jerry Jones, to his credit, backed up his words. There was a little bit of a controversy today and over the weekend because Jerry Jones had said that nobody else can do what I do. I'm not going to stop being the GM. No one else can do what I do. I do it the best. And immediately he comes in, backs up his words. That is great to see if you're a Cowboys fan, and now you need to see if he can do it with his other two guys. Dak Prescott is still looking for money. CeeDee Lamb just was paid, and now you still need to pay Micah Parsons as well. So that's a lot of money that's going to be tied up. This is an organization that, as weird as it is to call Jerry Jones and the Cowboys cash-strapped, it kind of feels like they're starting to get to that point with the amount of big contracts that they're going to have to give out. But getting back to CeeDee Lamb here. CeeDee Lamb has absolutely deserved this contract. He's a consensus top 5 wide receiver in the league. Some people put him up in the top 3. I'm going to put him here at 4, I believe, but he certainly deserves this deal. As much as it affects this season, obviously there were plenty of holdouts. He signs this deal with just 10 days left to go until kickoff. Obviously, they don't play on Thursday. They do play that Sunday. So the Cowboys have a little bit more time. They have just under 2 weeks to get CeeDee Lamb prepared for week 1 against the Browns. Now, this is not like he's starting from scratch. He knows this offense. It hasn't changed. You still have Mike McCarthy there. The offensive coordinator is still the same. So that shouldn't change the way it is. So I know there is some concerns about how he'll ramp up. I'm sure he's been preparing this offseason, even though he has been holding out. This is not something that should affect him week 1 too much. Now, we might not see 100% snap share for CeeDee Lamb, and honestly, it takes a little bit for everyone to get ramped up. That's how it goes. You don't often see 100% snap share for every single player when you're starting in week 1. Now, CeeDee Lamb should still see the field a bunch. And what this does outside of just the NFL landscape for the fantasy football community, this is huge. There was questions of whether or not he would play. There's no more questions. You can feel good drafting him all the way up at 1, 2, 3 again. This is one of those guys that's going to put up 100 plus catches, 1,500 yards, and 10 touchdowns. It's going to be he's going to be awesome. He is the weapon that this offense is going to be going through, because you look at the offense, right? Generally, the Cowboys have had a strong running game. And now what do they have? They have the aging body of Zeke, who I guess is supposed to be the all every down back. Sure, he's good in short yardage situations, and what he did in New England was really valuable last season, providing those 1 yard, 2 yard goal line touches, and he should get plenty of those. But him and Rico Dowdle is not something that inspires confidence. Those two together, when I look at the running back rooms around the NFL, it's at the highest you could rank it, I think, is 30. And that's a shame, because the Cowboys generally have strong running backs. The offensive line looks surprisingly good. So this offense is going to run through CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb getting the ball in space, doing what he does, a lot like last season. It should be a lot of fun, and he absolutely deserves this contract. This shouldn't change what the Cowboys' outlook is this season, but I do want to highlight the wide receiver market a little bit. In the beginning of this offseason, and we made it to the end, but at the beginning of this offseason, we were taking a look at all these guys that needed contracts, and there have now been 11 huge wide receiver contracts given out this offseason, with still potentially a couple more to come. Brandon Ayuk is still on the chopping block as far as getting a contract. T. Higgins might get one. He'll probably come next season. And Jamar Chase, that is where this next question comes. What is Jamar Chase going to do in reaction to CeeDee Lamb signing a 4-year, $136 million contract? What is the Bengals' reaction? Is this going to strengthen Jamar Chase's desire to hold in, to not participate? And we know that he showed up to practice the other day, played a practice. He's been holding in, but he actually practiced with the team. Reports are they're still not any closer to getting a contract done, which we'll break down Jamar Chase and his contract situation more in depth in another day, another segment. But just to touch on it for now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I really don't get what he's doing. I'm all for players getting their money. Players deserve to get paid. The owners, and it's smarter for them too, for the owners to just pay these guys. The longer you wait, the more expensive the contract's going to get. The market's going to keep growing, and then you got to pay more. Older contracts always look better. You look back to Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract. He's making $30 million a year. He reset the wide receiver market earlier this offseason, and now he's sitting outside the top 5, or just on the fringe of the top 5. That is insane. I mean, usually it doesn't change that quickly, but you look at markets like that, the wide receiver market that's growing seemingly exponentially as far as how big contracts are getting nowadays. You want to pay those top guys fast. And I know Jamar Chase still has an extra year on his deal, but he's the next guy that's going to have these big questions that we're going to have these big questions about. So we'll see what happens. And again, we'll do a deeper dive into Jamar Chase later on in this week. His situation is a unique one and deserves a whole deep dive. But the wide receiver market as a whole, we knew it was going to explode this offseason, but to see the extent that it exploded to. I mean, the previous highest paid receivers were sitting around $20-25 million. Tyreek Hill was up there. He had to restructure his deal to get into the 30s to stick in the top 5. That is crazy growth. And 3 to 4 years from now, all these guys are going to be up again. We look at all these contracts that have been giving out, all these massive contracts, either 4 or 3 years contracts. These are guys that are going to be elite in 3 years. You know, the wide receiver position, it's not a quick fall off like running backs are. You know, these are guys that are going to get a second big contract, and I just wonder how big those contracts are going to be when we get to that point. But congratulations to CeeDee Lamb. He absolutely deserved that massive contract. It's big for the Cowboys to finally get the ball rolling on at least one of their 3 big free agents. Now the attention, I would assume, turns to Dak. He's the guy that has the most money riding on him and seems like he's the furthest off, because if he hits free agency, I can't imagine he gets less than 60. So we will see what happens with the Cowboys with Jerry Jones, as the season is just 10 days away from kicking off in Kansas City. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are going to move into the world of college football. That's right. Football is back. We had our first action on Saturday. We are going to take a deep dive into everything that happens, including the first upset of the season on the very first game of the season. This should be a crazy year for college football and an excellent way to kick off the new era. So stick around. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.